You should just move the clock. I don't know.
Moved it last week, we'll move it again.
Diana was reminding me that last year at this time, she and John were at the hospital, so this is already a better Sunday than last year.
Right.
And we're pleased that you were willing to be on the schedule again. I would say something about Diana's career, but there are too many parts for me to remember, and so we'll wait to hear from you. Needless to say, we have benefited from your creative endeavors with Sunday school programs and Easter dramas and everything else. We're anxious to hear what else you have to share with us. We're all yours.
I can honestly say it has been my pleasure.
Good.
Thank you. You'll find that out. It is exactly what I put down. I taught at McAllister College, and those kids are smarter than any kid should be. And so it was a challenge to stay ahead of them. And so this is what I did at McAllister to keep my mind on what I'm supposed to be doing. I am in the parlance. I'll work on that. Although you have to listen up. John went like, you don't have to sing, because the voice is still an issue. But anyway, back to McAllister. See, it's already happening. In the parlance of one of the educational trends that was hot when I was teaching, I am an abstract random. Now, you all know what random means. Just put abstract with it and try and stay with me. I'll try and stay on message. One of the things when I was thinking of this, well, actually more than for this, it occurred to me that probably one of the greatest influences in my life, and I guess it comes down to that Holy Spirit that you promised was going to be here, was my confirmation verse. When I was confirmed, we were given a list of there were 24 in my class. It was kind of like you were doing with, we had a new pastor, and he was combining the 5th and 6th graders because that's the order in which he wanted them. So we had a list of, there were 24, so we had a list of about 50 Bible verses, and one of our assignments was pick a verse as your confirmation verse. So, of course, it meant we had to read the Bible. But the one that struck me was Matthew 5:16. I'll read it here, although I can recite it possibly. Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. And as I reflect back upon my life, that seems to be the direction I've ended up in. And related to that, and a lot of the influences in my life have to do with the family and the church. And I guess I want to talk a little bit about that because we've got grandparents and potential grandparents in this room. And how important my family was to me. First of all, my mother, in the term, your Father which is in heaven. And that is because when I was 6 weeks old, my mother was 27 years old. My father passed away very suddenly from a brain aneurysm, completely unexpected. He'd been out of town for 3 months exploring a new job possibility. And when he came home for Christmas, he was there on Christmas Eve. My mother went to put my brother away, who was a little over 2 years old. And when she came downstairs, he was in a coma with an open Bible on his lap. Called the hospital. they took him to the hospital. She had chided him because he brought home a very elaborate train set for a 2-year-old. Now, his father worked on the railroad, so he loved railroads. And my mother had said to him, what is a 2-year-old going to do with this? You know, don't worry. Well, when she got home from the hospital, because he did not recover from the coma, my uncle and aunt were there taking care of me, and my uncle set up the train so that my brother would have his Christmas present on Christmas Day. All that being said, from the time I was growing up and beginning to develop the concept of family, mother, father, I didn't have a father, and back in the day, my era, I was from a broken home. And if you're from a home, not much can be expected of you. So anyway, my mother used to say to me when we'd be saying bedtime prayers, you are so lucky because you have 2 fathers in heaven who are listening to your prayers. So in my mind, Father and Father in heaven were just, they were there, right? And if you needed your dad, you called on him. So, and I think I still do that. I know I still do that. Anyway, and the other person who was incredibly important in my life in building my faith was my grandfather. And I say that because I think sometimes we're not aware of what an influence we have on people. And I didn't even make that connection until I was in a leadership workshop for principals. And part of it, you know, how they make you think and write and what influence you live and whatever. And what are some things that, you know. And doggone, I wrote down, and this one I still need to learn. Let today be the troubles thereof. My grandfather used to say that on a daily basis. We had dinner with him every Sunday, and I always loved it. Otto Kaufman, does that give you a little background as some of the personality? He used to sit down and he would start every meal with, bless us, our Lord, and these thy gifts which we're about to receive from thy bounty through Christ our Lord. The Catholic grace, because my grandmother had been a Catholic. So I think that was his way of appeasing her. And I said to him, Grandpa, why didn't you say thank you for the food? And he said, because I haven't seen it yet. But at the end of every meal, it was, let us give thanks unto the Lord, for he is good and his mercy endureth. Now, even if the food wasn't perfect, we still gave thanks unto the Lord. So he had this wonderful sense of humor and this wonderful embodiment of a godly led life. And he loved little girls, and I was the only little granddaughter in the area. So, needless to say,
you were spoiled.
I loved it every day. And I loved that dear man until he died. It was about 11. But so many of his biblical quotes still flash into my mind as, you know, as I'm getting up, as I'm facing a problem, or as I'm trying to think and, you know, accomplish the next task. So I say that in that we really have no idea, any one of us, when we come across, especially children, how much we influence them by what we see and what we do and what we say. And to us it may be just a throwaway comment, but it comes back. And those of you who work with kids over the years, I'm sure have had kids come back and say, I did that, or I said that. Anyway, so my family was very Lutheran. We lived 3 blocks from church. My mother sang in the choir, so I got to sit in church with my grandfather. Now, my mother was the baby of her generation. She told me, if I was a little wiggly, my mother sang tenor, which I'm probably going to do if I ever get through this throat business. But anyway, so she was up, and the choir loft was up in front, right, in this church. And so we kind of sit back, and I'd be sitting with my grandfather. And I avoided looking at the choir loft. But every once in a while, I'd be sitting there, and this would happen. Just a little circle on the knee. Just go, and I'd look and concentrate. Of course, whatever I was doing, it was my grandfather's way of pulling me back into a worshipful, I hope. And my mother said, when I mentioned to her one time, oh yeah, he did that for me too. Another person that was incredibly important in the development of my faith base was the pastor that came at the time I was being confirmed. Now, the first pastor was Pastor McCurry, and he was, for a kid, God incarnate, okay? Big, tall man, white hair, this sweet smile on his face, lousiest preacher. But he would rock in the pulpit, and every sermon was the love of God and the brotherhood of mankind. So he was a sweetheart. He also sang in the choir, and there were a lot of choir parties that we as kids got drawn into. But when it came time for my graduation, it was a shift of pastors. He moved, Pastor McCurry moved, and we had a pastor named Gensler who came in and announced the last thing in the world he wanted to be when he grew up was a pastor, because his father was one and his brother was one. He was darned he wasn't going to be one. And the first question he asked us as we assembled his confirmation class, do you know how we get holy water? And of course, you boil the hell out of it. and having dipped into the Jordan River at the site of the baptism, I know why they boil the hell out of it. Anyway, probably don't have to do that here. And then another thing that truly affected my faith journey and my life's journey was when I was 16 years old. My brother died of cancer. He was 18. And that was a burden. He was sick for about a year. And he was smart. Oh, he was smart. It was hard coming 2 years behind him in high school because he was math science. And I was art and literature. And when I got into the chemistry class, they expected me to just pick up where he left off. Not even close. Anyway, but I got the sense that now I have to live for him, because here was this young man who had so much promise. He had been accepted with a really wonderful scholarship to engineering school, and he wasn't going to make it. And so, by golly, I had to. I mean, I had to take this over. I didn't go into engineering college. Didn't have to, I wasn't pressured to do that. So those were really major influences in my early life that formed my faith. And again, the way his death was approached, and the way Pastor Gensler, still the confirmation pastor, approached it and preached on it, made it seem to me there's a path, and it's a great place when you get there, and there are going to be people that I know, so carry on. So anyway,
was this in Minnesota? Did you grow up?
No, I grew up in Sheboygan, Wisconsin,
Okay.
where you were either Missouri Synod or Catholic, except for my grandfather, who was a banker, and there's another whole story because we haven't got that kind of time. But he had originally studied for the Missouri Synod ministry, and then due to a prank, he and his classmates, a bunch of his classmates, got involved in. He ended up taking the blame for it, so the rest of them could graduate. And he went and became a banker and was very successful. So I would say that the next thing, you have influences, and we all have passions. We all have things in our lives, things that speak to us, whether that's through the Holy Spirit or through innate talent or whatever, it doesn't matter. And those passions early on, the church, because we lived 3 blocks away from it, and we were very involved in doing things, and I started teaching Sunday school when I was, I think, 6th or 7th grade. I'd been confirmed, so I must have been 7th grade. And I had the pastor's kid. It was 2nd grade, and it was, our church at that time was a little old church in the center of town. I mean, it's like Mayville. All the churches, major churches, 3 Lutheran churches, 1 Methodist. You got to have some minorities. And Roman Catholic, because in Sheboygan you were either Roman Catholic if you came from the southern German, or Lutheran if you came from the northern German. So the kids, where were they? Anyway, it doesn't matter.
You were teaching the pastor's kids.
Oh, yeah! And my second Sunday, I go up there, I got my books, everything set. And the parish house was next door. First, no longer uses the parish house. And I, up in my room, and I walk in and the window's open. And I go, and I look out, and it had a roof over the porch. Guess where David Gensler was? Oh my gosh, the master's kids on the roof, how do I get him in? Well, I did get him in, so I'll throw that in. So, but I love church. My grandfather wanted me to be an artist because he wanted to be an artist, and he would spend hours with me drawing on a Sunday afternoon after we had dinner at his house. I loved music. My first solo was when I was, I think, either 3 or 4 years old, and it was on Christmas Eve, and I sang, into my heart, come into my heart, Lord Jesus. And I'd sing that for you, but I want to spare you the pain. Come in today, come in to stay, come into my heart, Lord Jesus. And that was kind of the summary of the Christmas program. Baby Jesus being born. And so you see why I have a special spot in my heart for Christmas programs. I love literature. I didn't know that I could read before I was taught, because I just did. I didn't know I could read silently until 2nd grade, when I came home and said to my mother, Mom, I can read without saying the words out loud. Because they gave me a worksheet and I could do it and I didn't have to say it. I've always loved drama. I wrote a play, or not wrote it, but I did a play with a little neighborhood kid. I could talk into anything. His name was Danny Miley, and I rewrote Rumpelstiltskin. And it was a musical. Today I grow, tomorrow bake, and then the child I will take. Does that that melody sound familiar? Yeah, well, I wasn't a composer, but anyway, so I love going to church, I love being at church, I love art, I love music, and I love the music of the church, and I do to this day. I cannot sit still even with no voice and not sing when you get one of the hymns that I love. So, and I've always loved learning. And teaching and learning go together, and I think that's one of the reasons I've always loved teaching, is that in order to teach, you have to learn something, even when you teach the bright kids. So, those are my passions: church, art, music, literature, drama, teaching and learning. And if you were to ask me today, what are my passions? Church, art, music, literature, drama, teaching and learning. So my career was with St. Paul. The bulk of my career was with St. Paul schools. I did lots of other things. I started babysitting when I was 10 and stuff like that. So working with kids. The thing with teaching in St. Paul, it's a big school district, and one of the people downtown, one of the administrators that I got to know because I worked on all these committees and stuff, said, "Diana, you have a 4-year attention span." Because it was about 4 years that I would do whatever my assignment was. Taught mostly middle-aged kids, not middle schoolers, but 5th graders, that age group. Although I taught 2nd and 3rd graders, I did some preschool teaching. Later I did some high school teaching. So, but anyway, in teaching for St. Paul schools, I taught 5th grade. I taught educational television, that was writing, producing, and appearing on Channel 2 until the school district ran out of money. I did a 2-3 combination. I did Learning Center, which was art. I worked with gifted and talented, first teaching and then developing the citywide magnet for gifted kids. And then I went back to school and administrative deal because I actually wanted to do more with gifted ed, and ended up a principal, founding mother of the Expo Magnet School in St. Paul. You notice all the enthusiasm I have for that.
Excuse me, I didn't hear any of that.
I ended up as a principal,
Yep.
founding mother of creating a school out of nothing, literally. And I think that was the job in education that I liked the least, although it was the most challenging. One of the things I discovered about being in a job I really suffered through, and John can attest to that, it was 3 long years at hard labor as far as I was concerned. I missed the kids. Starting from scratch, there was the administration, the downtown administration, there were the parents who all had ideas. Starting from scratch, creating a school, they knew how it should look, right? 23 wonderful, creative teachers that all had fabulous creative ideas, and they were all different. And then trying to create, it was herding cats. But the thing that I liked about that, and the reason why I only had a 4-year attention span, is I love the creative part of teaching. I love the kids, but I love the creative aspect of it, creating curriculum. Once I teach a unit and it went great, and somebody would say, have you written that up? I said, no, because I'm now teaching a new unit. And to me, the development and perfection and getting stuff to really work was the thrill and the challenge. And once I got everything going and it was top notch, it was, okay, now what can I do? And that's literally what happened when I ended up at McAllister College. I taught there I taught there one course for the first couple of years while I was still teaching in St. Paul. Left St. Paul on leave of absence from, I would say, utter exhaustion of starting the school for 3 years.
What was the name of the school?
The Expo Magnet School.
Okay.
Cross-age group, multiple intelligences. This was, which I believed in every single one of those principles, applying gifted ed principles to teaching all kids. I mean, so it was a thrill to me to be involved in setting it up and planning it. And unfortunately, if we could have get the parents out of it and the district office out of it, and some of the kids, no. There's something about really working hard on a unit or a lesson, and you know you got a great one, and the kids come in and all of a sudden, and it's like, you know, that was a good lesson. Those darn kids can come in and really. Anyway, so I worked a lot with alternative programs. I taught art with a Learning Center program, which is a wonderful district-wide, very unusual program where kids were bused to centers, and I was in the art center. I had gotten my master's degree in art education by that time, and that was amazing. I ended my teaching career, formal teaching career at McAllister College, teaching teachers. And that was a special thrill because at Mac, first of all, in order to get in, you got to have brains galore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And at McAllister, teaching was considered sort of vocational training. We were sort of well, I guess there are those people who want to teach. We should probably do something for them. So we had a small department, but it was great. And the kids who were there because passion.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted, particularly McAllister kids, wanted to make a difference in the world. And they're in their 18, 19, 20 idealism. I'm going to change the world, and there's nothing that McAllister does that doesn't promote that, because they're international.
Yeah.
And so it was amazing. And I taught educational psychology, which when I was taking my education course, I hated. And I had no purpose for it at all. It was just a stupid course. And but in developing Expo, we did a lot of research on learning. How does the brain learn? And brain compatible education is what was the buzzword then. And so I became really, really fascinated with the idea of what facilitates learning and what doesn't. So I took workshops, and to this day, it's the one area of science that John can talk me into reading articles from Scientific American. I'm still fascinated with the brain and how it works, and how it heals itself, what contributes to learning, what takes away from learning. And so that passion I put into my teaching, because I found out when I was actually teaching that every problem I had as a teacher, whether it was discipline related, very often to motivation. What is motivation? How do you motivate kids? Because if kids are really interested and having fun and learning, you don't have a discipline problem. So it's that magic way of arriving at that point. And applying all this theory to having the kids do it. And I also learned by doing, so the kids would be broken. I had 42 kids, and we met on Mondays from 7 to 10. Yeah.
Ooh, godly hour.
Yeah, 3 hours. You're not going to stand on lecture. Especially
Evening. Oh, I thought you meant 7 a.m.
No, that would have been worse.
Yes.
Anyway.
7 p.m. 's good.
But you had to condense it in 3 hours, a heck of a lot of information, and you don't talk for 3 hours at college students. The one time they moved it and gave me an 11 o'clock in the morning class, I would sit and watch the 3 football players who just would listen. So they were at least awake at 11 o'clock at night, or at 10 o'clock at night. But, so, to me, I was trying to share with them what I learned in my, by that time, 20-some years of teaching, a lot of it intuitively early on, and then I take a course and I find, oh, that's why that works. But you learn to fix by trial and error. So that was roughly 30 years of my life in the education field, really loving all of it, and except for the principalship. And I loved parts of that. I loved creating a new school based on these philosophical ideas. So could keep downtown away, and the good parents, I did have a cadre of parents that when things got rough, I send them down to the board meetings and let them stir things up. So we were having an evaluation at McAllister, and the state came in, and we had the accreditation come in, and the state, in its great wisdom, came in and said, I know you place all your teachers, and that was at a time when our teachers weren't being placed. I know there's a demand for your students as student teachers. They were idealistic, they were hardworking, they were doing this over and above their other schools. So they were bright, they were amazing kids. But this is the way you need to do it. Now you're covering all the bases, but you're covering them in the wrong classes. So you need to rewrite your curriculum. Well, about that time, John had been retired for quite a while, and this time he decided he wanted to do something more than just stay at home. And he said to me, I'd like to travel some more. And I'd really like you to travel with me, but I know you love what you're doing. And so if you want to stay and teach, just know, I'll just send you postcards. Oh, thank you, Joe. So I thought, travel, rewrite the curriculum to appeal to the state, who I think are on the wrong track anyway. Travel, get postcards. So that was the end of my formal teaching career. And so that leads to, what do you do when you retire? Well, I didn't have any trouble. First of all, my goal, I had said to John when I retire, there are 2 things I have to do before I die. First is, write a mystery novel and have it published. And second thing, because I'd written so much, professional crud. And the second thing is I have to appear on the stage in a community theater production, because I have all this ham in me. And I used to read stories with a lot of expression. I changed my voice for all the characters and everything like that. I really want to be in a community theater play. So, he said, there's an audition class going on at the Pips, why don't you take it? So I did. And then he said, well, they're auditioning for a play. Well, I'm not too interested in that play. And he said, well, you may as well just do it, just go through the actual thing. So I went and got cast.
What was it?
Oh, it was this funny Edgar Allan Poe one.
Nevermore.
Nevermore.
Oh, my goodness.
Nevermore. And I played, it was a little bizarre. I played the landlady in one of Poe's stories. It was, what is the mystery? Because nobody knows exactly why and when Poe died. It was a fun thing, and we did a lot of research on Poe. But all these theories were inserted with the stories, different ones, the Telltale Heart and all that kind of stuff. And so you played multiple roles. The worst one was, as the landlady, I had to go upstairs and I had a long skirt on, and I hadn't quite mastered the going up. So going up, and I'm stepping on the skirt and the skirt. And I had to hit Poe with a whiskey bottle, right? Now, we used a plastic one. and I had to learn stage, what do they call it? Stage battle. Is a better term for it. I'm sorry.
Fighting.
Yes. Stage fighting. Anyway, so they said to me, okay, this is what you do. You have the whiskey bottle in your hand, right? And he passes in front of you. You put your hand out, and you whack the hand, and he, in turn, sees it coming and does the dodge. In theory, that should work. But there was more than one time when I'd be going up the steps, trying to keep my and I missed the hand.
Is that on video?
It wasn't supposed to be a comedy. Anyway, that was my first, but I had a whale of a good time. And I started painting sets there, and that was, I loved doing that, because I'd always wanted to do that in high school, but they didn't let girls do that. And so and making props, and that to me was fun. I should digress, being random, I can do this. I met John at a children's camp where I was Miss Crafty.
Oh.
And he was a counselor. He was supposed to be the lifeguard, but we won't go into that. But anyway, I was Miss Crafty, and my famous words were, in theory, this ought to work. I didn't know what I was doing. But
A summer camp? What kind of camp?
It was St. John's Landing Camp, and it was a camp for underprivileged kids. Kids, a lot of kids from the west side, from the projects. Yeah. And it was
Excuse me, I went to that camp when I was a kid. I couldn't sing the song.
The three of you, can you do it?
I only know Eddie Cucci, Catcha, Kama, Toshinari, Toshinoka, Samaka, Wacky Brown.
Yeah, we didn't.
Whoa! You probably underprivileged.
How about a duet?
You had to ride the bus.
Pardon?
You had to ride the bus. On the bus you would sing this because you were going to St. John's Landing. And yeah, it was,
In
my
theory, that
sister and I
should
both
work.
went to that camp.
What
John's
state are we
never
in?
taught
Here?
Yeah.
Minnesota? That's why I asked, I've never heard of it.
Yeah, well, it's a beautiful camp and a great place for urban kids to experience the wilderness. You could scare them really easy if you talk about bears. Yeah, you could. They'd stay in the cabins at night. Anyway, so in my retirement, I'd taken my passions, art, music, literature, drama, teaching, and learning. And our travel, to me, is an amazing part. We are so blessed. We are so fortunate that we can do that, because I've always learned by doing and by traveling in the country with these people and learning. We very often have a guide that's a local person, so you get in China, one guy got along with her mother-in-law and the other one didn't. And when you marry in China, you go and live with the mother. And so, I mean, you get to know it. It's not like going and living for 6 months, unfortunately. I mean, that would be a whole different level. But you do learn so much about other people, and you see how alike we are, more than how different we are. I mean, we eat different food, wear different clothes, but as people, we have the same concerns, the same interests, and so forth. So I love that. My theater now appears to be writing and reinterpreting the scriptures for kids, and I love doing that. I love doing it. I love working with the kids to do it, to put on the little plays. And thanks to the help I get.
Looking at you, lady, stand up, take a bow.
Yeah, she does costumes for me. I couldn't do it without her. Anyway, and the other people, it's not Michelle's another one that steps in. we pressed Sharon into appearing in several roles, as have we urged some of you to join us, and opportunities will still be available. So I was reflecting on Bob's words this Sunday, living life on my own terms, and in so many ways I get to do that without, I hope, sacrificing the things I believe in and the difference I want to make. I think one of the reasons I want to be a teacher, and this is what I would tell my student teachers and the teachers that I was teaching at McAllister, the teachers to be, when you are a teacher, you affect the future in an incredible way. And it can be, you can be one teacher, and I know it's happened to me, I'm sure it's happened to Tammy. I see it happening when I see Ron Darius coming and hugging you, and there are kids that you may not even realize that you say something to them, you give them a direction, you encourage them, you send them off, and you don't know until years and years later, and often you're not even fortunate enough to hear them, or I mean, it's really a blessing when one of the kids from your past comes out and says, I remember when you made me clean out my desk during the Valentine party. I said, I did that? He said, yes, that's because you've been on me to clean my desk all day, so you said I had to clean it out while they were doing it. And then he said, and then I remember one student read a Valentine, I can't remember what it said, and I said, that for darn sure, something I agreed with, it was probably not terribly complimentary, and he said, and you laughed. I thought you were so mad at me, and you laughed when I came back with his wisecrack. He also, when he met his parents he came in later as a 4th grader, and so opening night of the, before school open house kind of thing. He brings in his, Mom, Dad, I want you to meet my teacher, Mrs. Swanson. When she finally gets it together, she either leaves it on the coffee machine or spills coffee all over it. Mother went, and I said, oh, he's got my number. Guilty. So, so you find out how you're perceived. It's a very humbling experience. I am to this day incredibly thankful for the life I have had the opportunity to lead. I wish everybody had the background, the parents, the grandparents, the wisdom that was passed down when I was young, and some of it I learned in German. And I wish everyone could know the joy of standing in front of a group of kids after explaining how to multiply decimals or fractions for the third time, and all of a sudden see this, I got it! You know, the light goes on, the shades go up, and you know that somehow they've got it, they've learned it. That is a thrill beyond the paycheck. To be able to live a life and have a strong religious life that has been filled with music. I'm sorry that I still refer back to the King James Bible. Because I think that's beautifully written, the poetry and so forth. I love to read and read books. I got to do drama. I mean, I'd never be able to be in a play, but I've been an Irish terrorist. I've been a ditzy old English woman. I've been a Jewish widow from Queens who gets the boyfriend, Sam the butcher. So I've had all these opportunities and continue to have the opportunity to travel, and it's just, my cup runs over. So, did I cover them all? Yeah. Okay, questions?
You want to tell us a few of the places you've traveled to? Do you want John to tell you?
Can
What
I
are your
answer for
favorites?
the audience? Okay, probably the most seminal trip was when John's sister was in Cameroon, because we went there and she lived there for 7 years, and we were part of a community. And walking in that marketplace, of color, and this was a very early trip for us. The color, the smell of all these spices, and they're just piles of them on blankets. And the cow is hanging up for the village, and they're whacking off the days, whatever you want. And then going to a dance in the kind of city center on a Friday night, and hear the teenage boys with drums doing this, checking out the girls, and hear the girls going. And then the little ones are running around going. And I thought, this is Friday night with teenagers in any town in the world. I mean, languages change, music change. Actually, we said, yeah.
I know it's kind of a heavy subject, but could you just touch on your theory on motivating people to learn? My kids had an exceptional problem with getting motivated.
Well, again, unfortunately, because we're dealing with individuals, one size does not fit all.
Right.
But what I would tell my student teachers, because I found it out the hard way, if you're not having a good time, they're not having a good time.
Mm-hmm.
If you can be enthusiastic and show the importance of the love that you have for your subject matter, and get them involved in some way where they see the practical application of what they're learning, or find out and do. Now, John learns, and I learned about learning centers, I think it was my third year of teaching learning styles, way before anything was published on it, because I came home from school one day and I said, oh, John, we did this greatest thing for social studies. I had the kids were studying these different countries, and I had kids, they're building homes out of, we had clay and straw and everything, building them and planning it, and they're in small groups. And he said, why don't you just have them read about it? He hates small
No,
groups.
I have teachers just so frustrated saying, I don't know how to motivate your child.
You gotta
Just
make.
can't do it.
You got to make what you're teaching meaningful to them.
And you gotta let some of them climb on the roof.
Maybe that's the problem.
Yeah, it is, and you've gotta approach it in different ways, because different kids learn in different ways, and they're turned on by different things. Is it easy? No. But the thing I used to say to my student teachers, one of my favorite things was, if the fish are dying, change the water. And as a teacher, and it reflects in my life today, I've always got at least one backup plan. Now, if that doesn't work, I can do it this way, I can change that. And
God bless you.
A shoot from the hip.
a lot of that is shooting from the hip. But you gotta know when to shoot.
Yes, exactly, when to do it.
And that's why I say when the fish are dying, change the water. I
Yeah,
mean,
I like
you've
that.
gotta start doing something different, because if you just keep on doing what you're doing, you're gonna turn them off. And you have to provide reading opportunities for kids that like to read, building opportunities for kids that like to build, some group work so that kids learn to, but not all group work. I mean,
You gotta work.
teaching is extremely hard work, and it requires a terrific amount of energy when you are doing it. And so they deserve every day off they get.
Could you go lecture teachers? For a retirement venture, could you go lecture some teachers on a regular basis?
Sure.
I think that would be really helpful.
Sure.
Get
Yeah.
Teacher
them
workshop.
to pay for it, that's.
Teacher workshop.
Yeah.
You could be the
Oh,
remotivator, you know, how they need, everybody needs
Yeah,
recharge.
Inspiration.
Well, I
Teacher
did
workshop.
some of that when I was in gifted ed and curriculum, because at that time the state required, and Swanson was even worse, I called it quick and dirty gifted ed across the river. Because they didn't even emphasize it as much, no money, but you must differentiate programs for gifted kids.
Well, a lot of ours were parent motivated too, a lot of,
Oh,
when
yeah.
my kids were in school, parents ran the gifted programs as volunteers.
Yeah.
And taught.
Yeah, the parents of gifted kids are your best friends and your worst enemies. They are helicopters, and you can stop with the first syllable sometimes. But they care about their kids.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Just to take that a little farther, I wrote a grant once for the National Endowment of the Arts and the Minnesota State Art Board, and it was teachers who were older who went around to schools in Minnesota and they taught. And the fellow we had was a cartoonist, and it was the first grant written in northern Minnesota, and he was teaching the learning styles. And he picked up on a visual learner, and he went from the class disciplinary problem to the head of the class. And if I told my daughter, what was that kid's name, she would tell you this much, and she was like 3rd or 4th grade. And we wrote the final project on him. And it was so interesting, because the teacher, the cartoonist, said, they think I'm here to teach cartooning. I'm here to teach these teachers how to teach.
Yeah.
And it was so, he was there then for 10 years. And he would come into the school district, and it was amazing.
Yeah. And a lot of times teachers, there is so much connected, and it's so much worse today because of this teach to the testing. I'm that I'm not part of that. But part of the challenge of teaching, and I guess one of the things I've always loved about teaching is probably one of the most crucial out there. Because there's so many ways to do it. And it requires instant adaptation, thinking on your feet, all this kind of stuff, being willing to adapt, being willing to try something else, learning, taking workshops, finding stuff. I didn't, even though I taught art, my thing for reaching kids was always drama. I did a lot of simulations, creative drama. I taught a lot of social studies and history that way. It was nothing like having a parent call you up and say, he was just irate. I went in his room, he was talking, he said, it's not fair, it's not fair, it's not fair. What are you doing to him? And I, oh, well, what I'm doing is I'm reenacting the Stamp Act, only they don't know that's what it is. Because I was teaching 5th grade, and I gave these little smiley face stickers. Everybody got 10 stickers, and they were in groups. Sorry, John. Based on learning styles, they all different. And I won't go into the whole thing, but I got to handing out when we got to the Revolutionary War, I got to handing out their stickers, and I gave them an extra 10. Not bad. And I said, yeah, but we're going to use the stickers a little differently. When you want to drink, it'll cost you a sticker. When you want to use, I had tape, staplers, markers, at the back of the kids to use. And then I had my tape and staplers and scissors on my desk. And in the course of the day, at the end of the day, I was, where the heck are those scissors? Because, they just come up. And so I said, it will cost you a stamp if you need to use my scissors. It'll cost you a stamp if you don't return it. And it'll cost you a stamp. And if you go to the bathroom, these are 10-year-olds, so, because we had regular bathroom breaks. If you need to go to the bathroom, it'll cost you a sticker. If you forget your flute and want to call your mother, it'll cost you a sticker. So it was all. If you sharpen pencils in the middle of the lecture, it'll cost you a sticker. And it was like classic. There were the loyalists, the loyalists. Well, she's not really asking any of that unfair. After all, you could sharpen your pencils at the beginning of school or when we got a work period, and well, we got supplies, so my loyalists. And then there were you can't do this to us. You can't do this to us. It's not fair. You gave us those stamps, and you can't take them away for stuff like that. It's stuff we need to do for learning. It was so funny. And I just kept waiting. When are they going to figure this out? When are they going to figure this out? They came in from recess one day, done for about 3 or 4 days. I actually had one little girl, Madeline Seaside, who led 4 students out. We had kind of an open,
like a protest.
Yeah, and they met in the library, and they weren't coming back until I got it right. So this mother was calling me up and irate. What was I doing with her child? For heaven's sake. So when I explained it, she said, "Is he going to learn anything from us?" I said, "I certainly hope so." Anyway, but one kid came in after recess, and it was funny because I was getting something ready, and he raised his hand and he said, "Excuse me, King George." And I said, I think I had a sucker in my drawer. "You win the prize!" And he goes, "King George!" You can't, every lesson can't be that way, but you throw stuff like that in off and on and hope for the best. Okay, my closing is, I told Bob when he said, "Do you want to do it again?" And I said, "Yeah, but I'm not sure what my calling is anymore." Because of the surgery that I had, it's changed what I can do. But I think my calling now, besides answering the phone until yes, is I am in the process of learning, and I hope demonstrating. I'm learning patience, gratitude, acknowledgement for the situation. Not acceptance, but acknowledgement. This is what I got. So far I'm a lieutenant. I'm working on getting back used to an outlook. And don't take anything for granted. Don't take swallowing for granted. I couldn't swallow. Don't take singing for granted. Don't take anything for granted. And be thankful for every day that you've got to do, even in everything that you want to do or you're capable of doing. But you've got an opportunity to get your life, to accept where you are and make the most of that. So,
So I'm struck, maybe you are too, between the connection that you remind us again today about the connection between teaching and learning. And I think a part of the calling for each of us is to be lifelong learners. And that might be in an academic kind of format or setting, or it might be something else, pursuing a passion or whatever it might be. But that's a very important part of what it means for us to be gifted by our Lord to continue to grow in whatever way we might be led. The other thing I want to comment on, because I think I know what I said in the sermon this morning, is about life on our own terms, which I was not necessarily advocating at one point in the sermon, and yet it seems to me that one way to think about that, and that you led off with, is if we begin to see life on our own terms as shaped by the Spirit, so that if with our good works our Father in heaven is glorified, that puts a whole new light, and that's in chapter 5 too, let your light, that puts a whole new light on what it means to live life on our terms. And that definitely has to do with calling and vocation. So, Diana, we're very grateful for your part in our congregation and that we are a part of your calling, and we're grateful for this hour today. Thank you. Next week, I can guarantee, will be completely different. Our final speaker in the series this year is Tom Chang, our organist.
We have 2 hours.
His home is Communist China, and you might tell us a little bit about that. It's up in the northern part of the country, not too far from North Korea. And his path and education and beliefs are different than ours. So I hope you can take that in this week as well. And then the next week is Palm Sunday. And then the following week is Easter Sunday. There will not be a class that day, so that we have more time for family and whatever fills the rest of Easter. And then after Easter, Amy will be back in the small catechism, picking up with baptism and the Lord's Prayer.